Revealed. Inspiring doctor's incredible fight against trespassing accusation. $4 million lawsuit trans. Dr. Sarah Collins never imagined she would be fighting for her reputation in a courtroom. The gentle breeze carrying the sweet scent of apple pie from nearby kitchens suddenly felt like a storm brewing within her. How had a simple act of kindness, checking on a stray dog, turned into this? $1 million accusation from her neighbor, Mr. Thompson, shook her to her core, and the whispers in Maplewood grew relentless. Friends she had cared for, families she had supported now exchanged glances filled with suspicion. It was as if the solid ground she had walked upon had suddenly become quicksand. Her heart raced with an influx of emotions. She remembered the warmth of placing her hand on an elderly patient's shoulder, the promise she always made to fight for those who could not. Yet, now she questioned her very essence. Should she remain the humble, caring doctor who never raised her voice? Or should she retaliate, diving deeper into Mr. Thompson's motivations? The moral boundaries blurred uncomfortably in her mind. Fighting back could tarnish the good she stood for, but allowing him to bully her could cost her everything. Charlie, her mentor, had told her to never let fear dictate her choices. As she sat in the solitude of her office, the notes from their last conversation echoed painfully through her thoughts. His warm encouragement battled against her rising despair. Sarah felt the weight of every patient she'd treated, every child she'd kissed goodnight, amid tears of discomfort. She had built a life around nurturing, but they were all staring into a chasm now, a chasm created by one man's pride. A shudder coursed through her body when she remembered how innocent her intentions had been. Yet, the whispers grew. What would the parents think? Is she really suitable for this role? Her reputation felt like it was crumbling, piece by piece, under the harsh scrutiny of judgment. As she scrolled through social media, the headline screamed, "Doctor sued for $4 million." It felt surreal. With each scroll, the strain in her chest tightened, constricting her ability to breathe. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. She glanced around her office. Framed pictures of her smiling patients adorned the walls. These were lives she had touched, proof of her commitment. But amidst all that warmth, an emerging sense of dread took hold. If she lost, everything would be stripped away, not just her professional identity, but her very sense of self. What would happen to the 1,000 little moments where her heart intertwined with her patients' lives? Tension climbed when she stumbled upon ancient documents in her mother's attic. They unveiled a lineage of resilience, a family history shaped by fights against injustice. It felt foolish, romantic even, to think about her ancestors' struggles, yet she couldn't help but feel the shadows of their bravery seep into her veins. Confronting her fears mirrored theirs in countless ways. The thought of surrendering felt like betraying their legacy, a deep-set anxiety clawing at her resolve. As she prepared to take the stand, Sarah balled her hands into fists, blood pounding in her ears. The courtroom looked different. The faces that once smiled were now scrutinizing her. All the sacrifices, all the late nights spent with sick children, they hung in the balance, promising both liberation and destruction. The judge's gavel echoed through her thoughts, and at that moment, she realized this was more than just a lawsuit. It was a reckoning. With her heart clenched, Sarah approached the witness stand, ready to face the very man who had shaken her world. Each step was heavy with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Would she fight for truth? Would she expose his hidden motives? The courtroom held its breath, anticipating her decision. And just like that, she stood at the precipice of a fight that could rewrite everything she ever believed in. The air inside the courtroom felt stifling, a palpable tension swirling around Sarah as she faced her accuser. Sitting in the witness stand, She could feel the weight of judgment bearing down on her shoulders, and the realization that her career and integrity hung in the balance was starkly overwhelming. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the memory of the countless patients she had helped. Mr. Thompson loomed on the other side of the aisle, his smug demeanor contradicting the gravity of the accusations he had leveled against her. Sarah's heart was an erratic drum as she tried to navigate the flood of emotions surging through her: fear, anger, and an acute sense of vulnerability. It was not merely a battle for reputation, it felt like a fight for her soul. As the proceedings began, her attorney asked questions designed to peel back the layers of Mr. Thompson's baseless claims. Each answer he provided seemed rehearsed, a tenacious plot to twist her kindness into something sinister. In him, Sarah saw not just an adversary but a reflection of her own self-doubt. Is this what I have become in their eyes? She wondered. The illusion shattered, leaving her to grapple with the woman she had always projected to others. More than ever, she recalled Charlie's wisdom about the necessity of being grounded in truth. With determination slowly morphing fear into resolve, Sarah collected her thoughts. The moment to speak was approaching, and staring into the eyes of the jury, she knew she had to embody the values she stood for. What do you fear, Sarah? She whispered to herself. A mantra, a rebuke against her own wavering confidence. The answer wouldn't be a failure to defeat Mr. Thompson. No, it was the fear of losing sight of herself amid chaos. When the prosecutor turned to her for a response, the supportive glances of her colleagues and friends in the courtroom began to blur around the edges, their whispers losing weight. She steadied herself, focusing her mind on her patients, the trust they had placed in her care. This wasn't merely about her anymore, it was about the promise she had made to all those who counted on her. The truth surged inside her. I checked on that dog because life matters, she began, her voice ringing with conviction. It's why every moment I spend with my patients matters. Did Mr. Thompson even ask what I was doing, or was the truth irrelevant to him? This isn't about the law, it's about integrity. At that moment, she felt a newfound courage blossom within her. The words flowed freely now, revealing her conviction, her ethics, and the compassion that had guided her throughout her career. As she spoke, she noticed the expressions around her shifting, curiosity sparking, questions forming on lips that had been tight with skepticism. Is he truly standing on solid ground, she thought, feeling a wave of momentum surge through her. Maybe she was not just defending herself, but illuminating a larger truth, one of compassion against cruelty, justice against malice. The prosecutor guided her through her testimony, each question digging deeper into her resolve. But when it came time to contradict Mr. Thompson's narrative, she chose not to retaliate in anger. Instead, she offered a piece of her heart, describing that moment with the stray dog in detail, expressing empathy for the creature's plight, an embodiment of how she viewed humanity. As she concluded her portion of the testimony, uncertainty still lingered in the air, lingering like a dense fog that refused to disperse. The jury leaned forward, catching every word. They had watched her evolve from the timid doctor questioning her worth into a fierce advocate for her truth. Yet the battle was not over. The real test loomed ahead in the form of Mr. Thompson's testimony. Sitting back in her chair, still vigilant, Sarah felt a fresh wave of determination course through her. She had stepped into her own power, but the culmination of this fight was far from finished. The moment had come to face the man who sought to tarnish her spirit. Would she be able to unearth the truth, or would it all spiral out of control? As Mr. Thompson rose, a silence enveloped the room, anticipation thick in the air. This was the confrontation she had to face, perhaps the most important moment of her life. The tension shifted as Mr. Thompson approached the stand, the air thick with unspoken conflict. Sarah's pulse raced, matching the steady rhythm of her breaths as she prepared herself. The man who wielded accusations like weapons was about to take his shot. He exuded confidence almost as if he thrived on the spectacle. Audience against protagonist, truth against manipulation. Doctor, you claim to care about life, but did you really believe it was your place to intervene with that dog? His voice was smooth, cutting through the tension with a practiced ease. There was a glint in his eyes, the kind that made Sarah's skin crawl. He was relishing the moment even as the stakes escalated. Every life matters, Mr. Thompson, she replied, keeping her tone steady. It's not just about the law, it's about empathy. If I saw someone in trouble, I'd act, just as I do for my patients. His smile was infuriating, a calculated mask hiding his intentions. But isn't it possible you overstepped your boundaries? That your actions were out of line with professional ethics? As he pressed, Sarah recognized a challenge veiled in bravado. It was a mirror reflecting back her earlier self-doubts. She refused to flinch. Resilience surged as she met his gaze, ready to transform any accusation into a demonstration of her values. Ethics? She echoed incredulously. What you view as an overstep, I see as a necessity. Caring for a life, no matter how small, is at the core of my principles. Mr. Thompson narrowed his eyes, clearly unsettled by her defiance. Any attempts to belittle her compassion seemed to only strengthen her resolve. So you're saying your actions were justified, even if they went against the law? His voice dripped with disdain, but Sarah sensed an opportunity in his challenge. I stand by my actions because they are rooted in compassion, she said, focusing on clarity rather than emotion. You see law as absolute. I see circumstance. Isn't it vital that we adapt our responses to what humanity truly requires? The courtroom shifted at her words, potentially swaying opinions. Sarah reached for her passion, dynamically weaving it into her defense. She recalled patients whose fates hinged not on rules, but on advocacy, the very essence of her profession. Each story fueled her, a testament against Mr. Thompson's disgraceful narrative. An episode involving a stray dog may seem trivial, but it speaks volumes about our role as caregivers, how we respond to need. It reflects a commitment to life, not just a duty. Sarah felt stronger with each phrase, the energy of conviction amplifying her voice. The questions still arose, relentless as waves crashing against a cliff. Mr. Thompson revealed layer after layer of manipulation, each designed to wear her down. But Sarah fortified herself with every exchange, gaining insights into the art of defense. She recognized that this was a negotiation, not just of words but of the very essence of who she was and what she stood for. She leaned into the momentum, becoming strategic, using her professional knowledge to counter his insinuations. Her approach was both personal and powerful. In this confrontation, she wasn't just defending her reputation, she was laying bare her conviction, transforming the accusations into an argument for compassion over cruelty. As she finished her rebuttal, Sarah glanced at the jury. Their faces spoke volumes, intrigue overriding skepticism. She had transformed their perception of her, no longer merely a victim of accusation but a vibrant advocate for truth. But as Mr. Thompson glared at her, the tension on his face shifted into something sharper, rage mingled with disbelief. With the scales tipped, a sense of unrest fluttered in the courtroom, signaling an impending backlash. Just as clarity dawned on her next move, the judge's gavel slammed down, commanding silence. You may proceed with your closing statements, the judge announced. Sarah felt the rush of clarity mixed with nervous anticipation. Her growing assertiveness reflected both a personal evolution and an impending climax. Would her newfound strength carry her through to vindication? Or was this only the prelude to an even greater trial of her spirit? The stakes had never felt higher, and yet a sense of duty prevailed. She had to expose the truth beneath an array of lies, igniting hope where despair loomed. As she rose to face the jury once more, the question still lingered. Would the truth prevail, or were the shadows of doubt and manipulation more formidable than her courage could withstand? Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the jury's gaze on her as she stood ready for her final chance to address their perceptions. Her own heart thundered, reverberating through her chest, mingling with the fear gripping her stomach. Yet, amid the chaos, she found a quiet resolve. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, she began, her voice steadier than she felt. I stand before you not just as a doctor involved in an unfortunate incident, but as a person committed to the philosophy of life and care. She recognized the power of her words, the responsibility of using her voice to shift the narrative. Each statement was not merely a defense, It was a canvas on which she painted her character and ethics. My actions were never about defiance, she continued, but about compassion for a living being unable to speak for itself. I acted not out of disregard for the law, but in light of an immediate need that transcended it. Each word surged with an intensity that sought to resonate beyond the walls of the courtroom. She could see the jurors sit a little taller, engaging with her presence. Consider this. When faced with the choice to preserve life or adhere strictly to regulations, what would you do? A murmur swept the room, a collective reflection that felt unprecedented. Sarah struck a balance between emotion and logic, playing into their humanity while framing her experience as a roadmap to ethical decision-making. Every law has its context, its heart. If adhering rigidly to the rules extinguishes compassion, then perhaps we must reconsider how we define ourselves within those rules. The argument started to take root, each point she made morphing from a strategy of defense into a reclamation of her moral ground. This wasn't just an argument, it was a manifesto for her practice, a glimpse into her evolving identity. As she spoke, Sarah's thoughts ventured beyond defending herself. She contemplated her journey, the years spent in medical school, the sleepless nights of compassionate care, and the lessons learned from patients in their most vulnerable moments. Each recollection lent her strength, sparking a burgeoning sense of authenticity. Was it possible she was on the cusp of discovering her true voice? I refuse to be reduced to mere allegations. I'm a physician who believes in the sanctity of life. I exist in the space between ethics and action, and as a caregiver, I chose to intervene. The conviction came through, not only in her words, but in her demeanor. Confidence radiated from her as she stood a little taller, fists tightening at her sides. This was her truth. She owned it. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted again. Sarah sensed it. The air around her hummed with the weight of her reaffirmed identity. She felt like a bulwark against the encroaching forces of doubt. But amid her surge of determination, a quiet fear lingered at the edges of her mind. What if it wasn't enough? Mr. Thompson's earlier attacks had struck uncomfortably close to her insecurities. Could she truly command the respect of the jury against the fine-tuned arguments of a professional opponent driven by manipulation? Each tick of the clock reminded her that time was fleeting. With one last look at the jury, she summoned a final plea. Please don't let this trial define who I am. Let it instead reveal how we, as people, must evolve toward compassion. Let it be a testament, not only to my actions, but to our shared humanity. As she completed her closing statement, she felt exposed yet powerful, raw yet composed. The gavel struck again, marking the end of her presentation, but the unease within her remained. Would they resonate with her declaration of values? Thank you, Dr. Miller. The judge's voice echoed through the courtroom before he instructed the jury to deliberate. As the jurors shuffled out, a gnawing uncertainty took root. The outcome rested in their hands, and Sarah was left grappling with the reality of her choices. Had she truly transformed their perception, or had she been naive to think compassion could prevail in such a ruthless arena? In the moments that followed, she turned inward, contemplating not just the trial ahead but the implications of her actions. This experience had awakened something deeper within her, a sense that she could not only stand for herself, but might also pave a way for others in the medical field to embrace the balance of ethics with empathy. Would the courage she had found sustain her through the verdict? Or would the pressure of the outcome threaten to unravel everything she had fought for? As she made her way out of the courtroom, uncertainty loomed, teasing the potential for an even deeper personal journey into self-advocacy and professional growth. The next chapter awaited. As she exited the courtroom, the oppressive weight of uncertainty bore down on her shoulders. The pathway to her future, once so clear during her med school days, now twisted and turned unpredictably. The sterile scent of antiseptic lingered in her mind, replaced by the stifling air of the court, where judgment waited in silence. Each step echoed the tumult of her thoughts. She had poured her heart into her closing statements, yet a gnawing doubt lingered. Was heartfelt rhetoric enough to sway the jury? Had she effectively conveyed the urgency of caring over compliance, Or had she merely stirred empathy while failing to ground her arguments in undeniable logic? The juxtaposition of emotion against the stark reality of law was a fragile balance, one that she dared to navigate. Outside, the sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows that mirrored her discontent. She felt an overwhelming urge to shake off the self-doubt creeping into her psyche. Perhaps this was a chance to solidify her newly discovered voice, not just for herself, but for the practice she championed. Each interaction and experience could be seen not through the lens of guilt, but as a stepping stone toward advocacy. The soft hum of the city buzzed as she maneuvered through the throngs of pedestrians. She thought back to her mentors who had taught her the value of forging connections, not just with patients, but within the medical community. Would they still see her as the compassionate caregiver they had admired? Or would this incident taint her reputation? Dr. Miller. A familiar voice broke her contemplation. Dr. Chen, her longtime colleague and friend, made his way through the crowd. His face bore an expression of concern as he approached. "I saw the verdict is out. How are you holding up?" "Just waiting, I guess," Sarah said, attempting a smile but feeling the vulnerability of the moment crack through her facade. "You were incredible in there. You spoke from the heart. It's easy to be passionate when it aligns with the rules, but you articulated the blurred lines we often navigate," he said, his eyes earnest. "You've become a voice for those stuck in similar situations." His words resonated, unsettling her. Yes, perhaps this could be a turning point, not just for her but for those facing ethical dilemmas in their practice. She envisioned a medical environment grounded in empathy, where advocates could emerge from the ashes of scrutiny and create change. But what did that look like? She had only begun to process the enormity of her newfound clarity. The urge to act burned within her. Formulating initiatives to support fellow doctors caught in similar predicaments began to crystallize in her mind. She envisioned workshops for ethical decision-making, fostering open dialogue instead of fear. Perhaps it wasn't merely about her case. It was a chance to galvanize the compassion she clung to amidst adversity. An internal voice nagged at her. Was she only reeling from the trauma of the courtroom? Or was this genuine ambition being steered by the adrenaline of survival? She acknowledged this uncertainty, yet decided to embrace it, hoping it could burn away doubt. "Sarah, embrace this. Share your experience. You're stronger than you realize," whispered Dr. Chen, as though sensing her turmoil. "You're right," she replied, a sense of determination filtering through the chaos. With renewed purpose, Sarah headed to her office, a space she had not only filled with medical textbooks but also imbued with a vision of transformation. Her fingers brushed over the numerous notes and articles on healthcare ethics piled around her desk. With each stroke, she could craft a narrative of change driven by compassion. The clock was ticking. She could feel it counting down the moments before the jury returned. Time for introspection had passed. The next chapter was waiting, her writing waiting to be penned, her voice the instrument through which the future could authorize change. And then sudden thoughts flashed through her mind. The idea that would ignite her mission. What if she organized a conference that addressed the ethical dilemmas faced by medical professionals? Could she mobilize others to join her in this fight for compassion? The dawning realization set her heart racing once more, but this time, it was driven by anticipation rather than fear. The moment was approaching. Could she reinvent the conversation around healthcare from this crisis? The power of empathy beckoned her forward, and she was determined to answer its call. Would this burgeoning plan serve as her salvation, or lead her deeper into the complexities she faced? The answer lay just ahead, beckoning her to venture forth. The office felt different that evening, a sanctum of thought emerging amidst the remnants of uncertainty. Sarah leaned back in her chair, surrounded by a labyrinth of medical texts and ethical treatises. Her heart hammered a steady rhythm that pulsed with fresh ambition. The notion of a conference blossomed vividly in her mind, a gathering where stories could be exchanged, moments of vulnerability shared, and paths toward common understanding forged. Yet the potential for change was entangled with fear. Sarah grappled with the idea of her own public speaking. It was one thing to advocate for patients in the hushed confines of examination rooms, but quite another to command the attention of a room full of skeptics, colleagues, and perhaps even those who doubted her intentions. Would they see the passion in her voice, or merely the taint of her recent courtroom struggles? As her thoughts swirled, she recognized a reflection of herself in the titles of the books around her, theoretical constructs of morality clashing with practical dilemmas. For too long, she had been a silent observer of the complexities inherent in medical practice. Now, with her newfound clarity, she could no longer afford to remain in the shadows. Driven by a sense of urgency, she opened her laptop and started drafting a proposal. It felt like a cathartic release, the words flowing freely. She envisioned panels on navigating ethical challenges, workshops where healthcare professionals would dissect their moral dilemmas. The more she scribbled, the more clearly she saw the significance of her experience. This could be more than an event. It had the potential to build a community of advocates advocating for empathy in medicine. Yet, her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. She questioned the logistics. How would she secure funding? Which speakers would share her vision? Would anyone be willing to join her cause, given her recent fall from grace? The dread of rejection loomed, a specter that threatened to snuff out her burgeoning ideal. In moments of doubt, she thought back to Dr. Chen's encouragement. He had reminded her of her strength, of the passion and insight that had drawn colleagues to her side for years. Surely she could rally those who believed in a compassionate approach to medicine. Tapping into her professional network, she plotted her next steps, listening to the stories of her peers, understanding their challenges, and formulating a plan that would encompass their diverse experiences. That night, she reached out to mentors, colleagues, and friends, inviting them to coffee or lunch to brainstorm ideas. Each interaction fueled her enthusiasm further. With each supportive response, the initial prickle of insecurity diminished into a flicker of hope. Sarah was no longer alone in her battle. Others bore witness to the moral conflicts embedded in healthcare, quietly grappling with their own struggles. But she also stumbled upon resistance. A few colleagues, insulated in their traditional roles, questioned the value of tackling such issues in a public forum. Their dismissal felt like a personal affront, a reminder of the very scrutiny she sought to overcome. Could she truly convince others to step outside their comfort zones and join her in forging a new narrative? The tension of persuasive dialogue weighed heavily on her mind. She questioned whether her vision was too lofty, too idealistic, given the realities of a profession so deeply entrenched in compliance and tradition. But somewhere amidst the chaos, an exhilarating truth emerged. Her vulnerability could be her greatest strength. If she went forth with authenticity, others might feel emboldened to share their truths as well. This realization propelled her. Sarah vowed to harness the momentum she had carefully cultivated, transforming her personal crisis into a compelling advocacy platform. But lurking beneath her resolve was a lingering fear. What if she couldn't sustain this drive? What if challenges she hadn't foreseen arose, tearing apart her plans for change? As the evening deepened outside, leaving her office cloaked in shadows, she sensed the weight of her aspirations. The next day would demand presence and clarity. Her journey into the thicket of moral ambiguity had just begun. The path was still murky, but she was prepared to walk it. The following morning she would face a choice that could redefine everything, a call to confront the very institution that brought her case to light. Would she stand tall, knowing the power of her narrative, or would she crumble under the weight of intimidation? With that uncertainty swirling in her thoughts, Sarah braced herself, knowing that the true test of her resilience was about to unfold. The morning sun spilled into Sarah's office, illuminating the countless reminders of her aspirations and fears. Each ray felt heavy, like illuminating the very doubts that had kept her ensnared in her previous silence. She sat at her desk with a fresh infusion of determination, her fingers poised above the keyboard once more, but this time brimming with a clearer purpose. Today was different. Today she would answer the request from the medical institution that had initially turned her life upside down. A public forum conference, her proposal for dialogue on healthcare ethics, could finally see the light of day. The prospect sent both excitement and anxiety racing through her veins. She had extensive reports from colleagues and stories gathered over the past weeks, fragments of shared experiences that would lend weight to her argument, but her focus waned as shadows of self-doubt crept in. Who was she to stand before an audience and voice the turmoil experienced within an institution that was known for its stringent conventions? Despite the blossoming support she had experienced, the whispers of tradition still lingered, wrapping around her resolve like a thick fog. Their doubts echoed in her mind. Was she indeed equipped for this challenge? Drawing a deep breath, Sarah decided to gather her thoughts, feeling the pressure tighten around her chest. She flipped through her notes and memories of interactions with other professionals. Each one had shared their own struggles, their own reasons for wanting to speak up, for wanting to forge a narrative that shattered the silence. Could all their voices unite in her desire to foster empathy in medicine? Could all their pains find resonance in her story? She picked up her phone and began to scroll through her contact list. Each name was a potential ally, a reminder that she was not alone. The comfort of camaraderie sparked a burgeoning resolve within her. Sarah knew she needed to pair her personal struggles with their stories, create a mosaic rich with narratives that transcended individual experiences. There were risks to be taken, though. Pushing past the wall of skepticism her profession built over years could lead to backlash, not only from those who doubted her efforts, but also from the institution she had previously considered her home. Would her peers stand behind her as she muddled through vulnerabilities she knew they all shared, but seldom addressed openly? In that moment, she chose. Determination dripped from her thoughts. She would not yield to fear. Sarah set up a series of small meetings, inviting colleagues to participate in a discussion. She would create a space for open dialogue before the big announcement. The idea was bold, perhaps even reckless, but that's exactly where she saw potential for growth. A gathering of those who would expose their raw truths not within conference walls but behind closed doors. A safe constellation of empathy, where they could hone their thoughts and feelings. As the time for her first meeting approached, she paced the room, thoughts racing. Would her colleagues embrace the opportunity to speak? How would she address their concerns? Just then her phone buzzed. A message from her mentor, Dr. Chen, flashed across the screen. Remember, power lies in vulnerability. Don't shy away. Speak your truth and invite others to speak theirs. She felt her heart swell with a fierce mixture of gratitude and determination. This moment would challenge her personal and professional growth in ways she never imagined. She was not just fighting for herself. She was rallying for the very essence of empathetic healthcare. As she made her way to the meeting room, a fresh wave of adrenaline hit her. Each step echoed her resolve. She would confront the looming institution, no longer with trepidation, but with a hidden strength she was only beginning to uncover. With the door almost within reach, Sarah paused, a thought jolting her to a stop. What if she wasn't just ready to go forward, but also ready to dismantle the silence that suffocated her colleagues? The weight of uncertainty flickered in her chest, but the flicker ignited her spirit. She pushed through the door. The time had come to face the institution that shaped her career, but more importantly, it was time to discover the untapped depth of her influence and courage. Would her colleagues rally behind her in solidarity, or would the echoes of doubt pull her back into a corner? Inside the room, she felt the anticipation build not just within her, but also against her surroundings. A powerful storm of emotions and expectations. Little did she know, this meeting would become the catalyst for revelations no one had anticipated. The room was filled with an electrifying energy as Sarah entered, a palpable tension hanging in the air. Her colleagues were already gathered around a large oval table, murmurs of uncertainty ricocheting off the walls. There was a mix of reluctance and curiosity in their eyes, making the space feel more like an interrogation chamber than a sanctuary for dialogue. Settling into her seat, Sarah took a moment to inhale the atmosphere, which was thick with unspoken fears. She recognized that each of them carried burdens, personal experiences that had been pushed aside in favor of professional decorum. Today, however, she was here to change that. Steeling her resolve, she opened her folder of notes marked with a bold heading, Finding Our Voices in Healthcare. Thank you for coming, she began, her voice steady but laced with an underlying urgency. I know talking about our experiences in this environment can feel risky and uncomfortable, but I believe we can shape a better future for our patients and ourselves if we begin to share our truths." She paused, searching their faces for encouragement. As she spoke, she could see a flicker of recognition in some patients' stories that were buried beneath layers of bureaucracy, the ethical dilemmas that haunted their practices. But just as quickly, she noticed the walls begin to re-establish themselves. The skepticism returned. A colleague shot her a questioning look, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line. "Sarah, this sounds idealistic. What if we end up in trouble?" "How would the institution respond?" he challenged, and the room stiffened. Could she rise to this challenge? The question hung in the air, making it heavier with each passing moment. But in that instant, Sarah felt her heart race. Every ounce of doubt she had faced rushed through her veins. "I believe our silence is far more dangerous than our voices," she replied, clarity sharpening her words. "If we don't speak up, we're complicit in the mistakes being made. Our patients deserve more than the minimum care driven by red tape." A murmur broke out among the group. One by one, eyes softened, and hesitant expressions morphed into contemplative frowns as they absorbed her conviction. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could dare to be vulnerable too. Each word she dropped felt like a challenge, igniting an ember of courage in some. Slowly, a hand raised, a young nurse, nerve-wracked yet resolved. "I've been wanting to share my thoughts about patient neglect." As she spoke, another voice joined, and then another. They began to open up. A sense of solidarity began to swirl in the room, weaving their individual stories into a shared tapestry of experience and pain. For the first time, Sarah could see the collective hesitance dissolving. It felt liberating. Then came the moment of raw honesty from Dr. Hargrove, the chief surgeon, his voice trembling. "I've been doing this for so long, convinced that this is just how it is. But I feel trapped. I don't know how to speak up against policies I disagree with and still keep my job." Sarah's pulse quickened. His admission resonated with a multitude of hidden truths seeping into the collective consciousness of the group. "You're not alone, Dr. Hargrove. None of us are. What if we could explore options together?" The discussion unfolded like a phoenix rising from the ashes of apathy, a realization igniting inside each of them that change was indeed possible. They could reshape the medical narrative, challenge the status quo, and reclaim their lost agency. Yet amidst the burgeoning hope, Sarah felt a stirring of trepidation. Would the institution welcome their voices, or would they face backlash for daring to speak the unspeakable? Her mind raced with the implications of their newfound courage. As the meeting wrapped up, the camaraderie made way for uncertainty. Promises to meet again circulated. There was still work to be done, and the risks were palpable. Sarah's heart pulsed with exhilaration, but also with the looming dread of consequences. The type of courage they had summoned was fragile. It could lead to both growth and retribution. Walking away from the meeting room, she felt uplifted, yet a storm of internal conflict raged inside her. She had lit a torch of truth, but before her lay uncharted territory fraught with challenges on how to navigate the institutional labyrinth. As she cradled the door handle of the building, a thought struck her with undeniable intensity. Were they ready to face the battles that would surely come? Sarah stood at the precipice of a journey that would not only test her resolve, but could alter the course of their careers and the ethical landscape of their profession. What lay ahead? Would the revelations they had dared to share inspire others to join them or shatter everything they had built? As she stepped outside, the weight of her decision settled heavily on her shoulders, and she knew this was only the beginning. The sound of her footsteps echoed through the empty corridor, each step resonating with a mix of determination and anxiety. Sarah's mind churned as she replayed the meeting, desperately attempting to grasp the shifting tides within her team. Each voice raised in that room had lit a flicker of hope, yet the backlash she feared loomed large, hovering over her like a dark cloud. Back at her desk, she stared at the blank screen of her computer, willing the cursor to move. Thoughts raced through her mind, strategies to solidify their coalition, arguments to defend against inevitable scrutiny. But doubt seeped in, nagging at her confidence. Could she keep them all united if the institution came down hard on them? The weight of responsibility felt crushing. Her fingers hesitated above the keyboard. Seeking solace, she stared out the window, tracing the patterns of raindrops cascading down the glass. A small part of her longed for the simplicity of the past when her focus had solely been on patient care. Now, each decision felt imbued with far-reaching consequences that extended beyond mere medical practice. What had ignited this fire within her? Was it altruism or something deeper? An urge to reclaim her own voice lost in years of compliance. She opened her notebook, pages filled with frantic notes from various meetings. Be the change, not the victim, she jotted, reminded of the mantra that had pushed her to speak. But as the minutes slipped away, so did her resolve. She closed her eyes, letting anxiety wash over her. The memories of drained nights spent wrestling with patient cases began to flicker through her mind, each case a testament to the stagnation of a system that often placed bureaucracy above genuine care. She recalled a patient, Mrs. Thompson, who languished for weeks awaiting necessary treatment, lost in the shuffle of policy-induced delays. Sarah sighed deeply, the recognition of her own experience fueling her determination. Mrs. Thompson's voice had been silenced, but Sarah could do something about it now. That breath was the moment she decided to turn doubt into action. Submitting to impulse, she pushed the chair back and stormed out of her office. The open door of Dr. Hargrove's office beckoned her. He was hunched over papers, but as she knocked, he looked up, his weariness palpable. "Sarah," he greeted, already sensing the urgency in her presence. "What's wrong?" "I need your help," she said, taking a seat without waiting for an invitation. "We can't lose momentum. If we don't act now, all this, the voices we've uncovered, will fade. We need a tangible plan to advocate for our patients." Dr. Hargrove rubbed his temples, visibly torn between his desire for change and the weight of institutional loyalty. "We risk a lot, Sarah. You know the hierarchy. You're putting yourself on the line." She locked eyes with him, feeling strength swell within her. "If we don't act for change, aren't we just perpetuating the issue? I can't go back to ignoring the truth. We need to form a committee, share experiences, push for policy changes. But it starts here, with you." His gaze deepened, contemplation battling fear. Finally, he nodded slowly, a flicker of admiration igniting in his eyes. "All right, let's talk about how we can start reaching out. I don't want to feel trapped anymore either." They spent the next hour strategizing, outlining the vision for a more accountable healthcare environment. Each suggestion they drafted felt empowering as they transformed abstract notions into actionable steps. Sarah could see a path forward, but the risk still simmered beneath the surface. Internal forces would inevitably push back. As she left Dr. Hargrove's office, adrenaline coursed through her veins. The conversation had been exhilarating, but looming concerns reframed the urgency of their decisions. The clock was ticking, and while they had the spark of motivation, could they sustain the fire against a system inclined to silence dissent? That night, as Sarah reflected, servitude to the system weighed heavily on her. She understood the stakes had never been higher. The personal battle between safety and truth may soon play out. What consequences awaited them as they moved forward? Would they transition from whispers to a full-throated roar, or would they simply be silenced once again? The unknown beckoned, and she couldn't help but feel the gravity of the challenge before her. The next morning, an unexpected email from administration awaited her, an invitation for a discussion regarding feedback from the previous meeting. The sign of interest, or a warning shot? Sarah steeled herself. The moment was approaching where she would need to choose between confrontation and compliance. Would she stand firm, or would fear reel her back? The conference table was adorned with the familiar cold veneer of corporate neutrality. Yet Sarah felt a warm pulse of determination as she took her seat at the head. The weight of the moment loomed large, the email's invitation simmering with potential. This was it, the culmination of her efforts, the moment to advocate not only for herself, but for those lost within the shadows of healthcare's bureaucracy. The room filled gradually, colleagues taking their places. As the final chair scraped across the floor, Sarah's heart raced with certainty. This meeting could chart a new course in their collective approach to patient care and ethical decision-making. Tensions ran thick, the anticipation palpable as the director of the institution, Dr. Simmons, entered. His stern expression set the patriotic tone within the room, and Sarah was all too aware of the significance of her stance. "Thank you for being here," Dr. Simmons began. "We received considerable feedback following recent meetings regarding ethical practices within our institution. I'm hoping we can discuss the way forward." He referenced formal documents cluttered in front of him, a presentation previously curated, rife with policies and strategies that felt cold against their rising sentiments. As he opened the floor for discussion, Sarah gathered her thoughts, recalling every whispered story she had heard. This was not merely about changing a policy. This was an opportunity to illuminate a path where compassion could prevail over compliance. "Dr. Simmons," Sarah interjected, steadied by the resolve she fostered within the safe harbor of her colleagues' support. "I appreciate the initiative to address these issues, but it's not enough to simply review documents. We need to listen to the voices of those who are being affected directly by institutional neglect." Dr. Simmons raised an eyebrow, the initial skepticism genuine. "And how do you propose we do that?" "By creating an avenue for open dialogue," she answered, emboldened. "A committee that focuses on real stories and experiences to reshape how we engage with our patients, adapting our practices to prioritize compassion. We can examine policies through the lens of human dignity, taking actual cases and examining what went wrong and how to fix it." An audible buzz swept through the room, collective breaths held as Sarah paused, inviting the weight of her conviction to sink in. Colleagues exchanged glances, encouragement woven with apprehension. Ultimately, the balance between fear and empowerment began to tilt in her favor. She felt it. There was movement, an opening towards change that had seemed so far out of reach. Dr. Simmons cleared his throat, attempting to conceal his discomfort. "A committee, you say? These matters of ethics are complex. We must be cautious not to disrupt established protocols." "But Dr. Simmons," chimed in Dr. Hargrove, his voice firm, "how could we disrupt a system that leaves our patients not only neglected but suffering? Real change isn't born from silence. It's built on challenging structures that no longer serve their purpose." The room shifted, faces changed from skeptical to contemplative, and a tidal wave of cautious agreement began to swell. Sarah felt fueled, her breath steadied in anticipation of their next steps. The conversation rambled back and forth, punctuated by moments of hesitation, while Sarah listened intently for those ready to speak up. She saw eyes ignite with understanding, and frustration recalling stories of patients whose needs had been overlooked due to bureaucracy. As the discussion progressed, a powerful realization dawned. A collective commitment to advocacy was taking shape. "Okay," Dr. Simmons replied, visibly reforming his stance. "Let's create a task force to explore this further. But you must understand, changing institutional practices won't happen overnight. It requires dedication and a strong presentation of your findings." "Absolutely," Sarah affirmed, buoyed by the shift in tone. "We're ready for the hard work. We can begin by establishing goals and holding discussions to gather those stories. Then we can take the necessary steps toward change." The meeting continued, glimmers of hope lighting the faces surrounding her. Together, they drafted a preliminary outline, one that would navigate the complexities of advocating for patients while appeasing institutional structures. Sarah reveled in the collaboration, feeling the chains of fear begin to crack and crumble. As the meeting adjourned, her colleagues expressed excitement for the next steps. They were no longer merely weary practitioners but advocates, emerging from the constraints of silence. As she stepped out of the meeting room, Sarah paused, surveying the once daunting hallways that had felt heavy under scrutiny. With every stride, confidence enveloped her. She had not only reclaimed her voice, but had sparked a new movement among her peers, one dedicated to transforming healthcare into a space governed by compassion, integrity, and ethical medical practice. In the days and weeks to come, Sarah would pour her energy into building the foundation for this initiative. She would convene meetings, collect stories, and thrive as a leader among her colleagues. Her encounter in the courtroom had catalyzed a deeper understanding of her role, not as a victim of circumstance but as a champion of change, paving the way forward. As she embraced this chapter, Sarah could reflect back on the challenges she had faced. It all led to an incredible truth: that unearthing ethical complexities opens doors, yielding not just growth for herself but an empowered network of advocates willing to challenge the status quo. This was not simply a victory over skepticism, but rather a profound awakening, one that embraced vulnerability as strength and propelled her toward a future rich with possibility. No longer ensnared by the shadows of fear, Sarah stood in her newfound authority, ready to embark on a journey that promised to reform their practices, transforming lives one voice at a time. Now, as her story reaches its precipice, she felt the stirring call to action across the landscape, an invitation yearning for engagement, for commitment to change, for those who share her vision. If you resonate with this journey of transformation and compassion, you need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, igniting the possibilities for others seeking their own paths to empowerment. Comment your reactions and theories about the thriving movement Sarah has ignited. Your voice may be the spark that inspires someone else to rise. And please share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this vital conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread the message of hope and change.